everybody. Oh, man, this is Anthony Brogdon coming at you from my guest. Check this out, my friends. And this is huge. All of them are huge, not as bigger than the others. But this is different because of where this gentleman is. He's in Scotland. Have you heard of Scotland, my friend? Scotland.
Scotland, Europe.
In Europe. I'm telling you, I'm bringing this history from around the world. I find these people somehow. I might have found him on Twitter. I sent him a message. He said, yeah, I'd like to tell you what I know. I'm not playing with you, my friends. The train has left the station. We over 500 videos strong from around the world. I got one lady out of Australia. I got one lady out of Nova Scotia, Canada. I got several people out of London in the UK, out of Africa, and now we're out of Scotland. And I got them out of Jamaica and the Caribbean. And I'm looking for them in Brazil and in Portugal and all over because there's history. And see, we call it Black history only because Black people involved, but it's history. And we are everywhere and around the world. So it's my aim to bring this to you. So hit the subscribe button on Strong Inspirations. It's free. I don't ask no money to do this. This is my mission and ministry through the people who come on here who share these stories. Hit the like button on this video. Good looking guy too. You're gonna really like this, man. Yeah, ladies out there. Good looking guy out of Scotland coming on the show. And so hit the like button, hit the notifications bell, which means that when a new one comes up, you get a ding, a shock, a smoke signal. Your lights flicker, your dog, your spouse kiss you or something to let you know there's new content on Strong Inspirations. And then everybody do this for me. Don't, please, don't keep this to yourself. You up here running around telling people all this history you know, and then you don't tell them where you get it from. Don't do that. Let them know about Strong Inspiration. And you people in the classroom, let your kids see this. It's free. You can move the cursor wherever you want. Move me out the way. I got no problem with it. Go right to the subject. Get the heart of it. That's fine with me. All of you are around the world who are watching me. Now, let me tell you, did you see the one? I gave you some clue of the lady who integrated the school in Florida and her classmates tried to kill her one day? Watch that video. Did you see the one I did with the guy out of South Africa who says he's colored and he lived through apartheid? Watch that video. Watch the one I did with the lady out of Toronto, Canada, who said, and it's confirmed, she's the one that founded Black History Month in Canada for that country. Watch that video. I'm not playing with you, my friends. This is serious on my note. And then, as you may know, I'm a filmmaker. I did this documentary called Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. I was not taught that there were enslaved Black folks in America who own businesses. When I found that out, I was like, oh my God, I got to do something with this information. And I put it in the documentary. It's streaming on Amazon, and it's streaming on Amazon in the UK. Then I wrote a book, boom shakalaka, my friends. I'm serious. The book, Black Business Book, is over 200 facts. And I'm telling you a little bit of everything. And I'm not adding no commentary. I want the fact to stand on its own merit. I don't want to dilute it. I want you to see the fact. I give you the reference section where I found it, because I do get messages from people. Hey, man, I didn't know that. Here it is, and this is where I found it. So get you a copy of the book. One more thing, I want them kids to know this information. I got a children's book. They did it. 30 rich Black people in the 1800s. And for those people in them states that don't want to talk about slavery, there's no mention of slavery in this book. I just tell you what they did. You can figure it out on your own because it happened in the 1800s. So do that. Go to my website, businessintheblack.net, please. And y'all know I'm doing public speaking. I'm coming around the world too with with what I'm talking about. I plan to be in London in October. I want to share this with people. So go, all that again is on my website, businessintheblack.net. Now you hear me use this term strong a lot. Strong is my favorite word. And in my world, strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that is my introduction to the strong man out of Scotland on my show today. Come on, brother. Tell us your name. Let's get it on.
Hey, Anthony. My name's Alex Renton, and I'm so pleased to be with you virtually in Detroit and to meet you. Hi there.
Yeah, thank you. Alex, I gotta say, and what I do at the beginning is ask you a couple questions, about you, so the audience gets to know you. So, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Canada, in Toronto, in 1961, and my parents had migrated there from Scotland for work, and when I was 2 years old, they decided to migrate all the way back again. so
Oh,
so
okay.
I was then raised in England actually, and but I have a Canadian citizenship, a Canadian passport, and I'm a proud Canuck.
Okay. So when you say they migrated to Scotland, what's in Scotland? Let's talk a little bit about that. Why is Scotland a beautiful country? Tell us a little bit about it.
We like to think so. I mean, Scotland is like half the United Kingdom. England is and Wales are the other half, and a little bit of Ireland. But so we're half the land area, but we're only 10% of the people. Scotland is the far north of Great Britain, and we have the lakes, we've got the mountains, we've got the beauty, we've got a lot of the poverty. It's the poorest part of the country, and we're very proud. And we're not English. We don't call ourselves English. We call ourselves British and Scottish, but not English. And it's not a distinction many people can quite get their heads around. But yeah, so I mean, maybe we're the Appalachia of UK.
And that's because they don't have a lot of industry there. Is that the big
Yeah,
companies aren't
industry. I mean,
there, that
well,
kind of thing?
yeah, I mean, you'd understand it coming from Detroit. I mean, heavy industry was big here, shipbuilding and so on, and that died in the 1970s, 1980s, and really nothing ever replaced it. So now we have tourism. There's a lot of Americans with Scots ancestry who come here as tourists, and we have whiskey. We export Scottish whiskey, the best whiskey there is. But there's some people who will argue about it. But and yeah, it's progressively got poorer, and we're a long way from the center, from the wealth areas. We're a forgotten end of the country and not very significant to London.
Oh, so when you say the country, what country are you talking about? You're talking about London as the country, or what do you mean the country?
Yeah, well, I would call the country what we call the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So what a lot of people would call England, but we don't call it that. I mean, we are part of the United Kingdom, which is England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, which is four nations in one country.
And all of them with separate governments
I'm
and
gonna have to
so on
get
and
my
so.
I'm gonna have to get my blackboard out with the map in a moment.
Yeah. But all of them are separate countries with government entities, what have you.
Yeah, we have government entities, but I think you compare it most to the states in the terms of, like, we are states within the United States. We are
Oh,
we are kingdoms, we are nations within the United Kingdom of Great Britain.
okay. But
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 there's no one
because
president that runs the United Kingdom.
say again.
Is there one president that runs the United Kingdom?
Well, we have the king. So
Okay,
King Charles is our
okay.
king.
But that
Uh,
but he doesn't have political power, does he?
No, he has no. I mean, he's a constitutional monarch. I mean,
Yeah,
he's a figurehead. No, so the power is in with us in the prime minister, who Americans prime ministers are new. We have a brand new prime minister from last week who's called Keir Starmer. Um, Americans will remember prime ministers like Tony Blair and David Cameron
yes,
and so on.
right,
So yeah, the way our democracy works is the king is the titular head. You know, but he doesn't have the power the way a president
right,
does.
right,
And obviously he's not elected, and it's voted down the generations. There's
right.
some people who would say it ought to be elected and we shouldn't have a king at all. But yeah, you guys,
Sure,
you
sure.
guys kicked the king, our king, out in, in the
Sure.
18th century. But that's how we muddle along. But
Okay,
yeah,
okay,
don't call me English because that's
okay.
I'm
Okay,
not.
I got you. All right, we're gonna do that. I got to get to the heart of it. Are there black people in Scotland?
Very few. It's a very white country. I mean, it's. I mean, I think the population of the non-white population of the whole nation, England and Scotland and Wales of Great Britain, is about 14%, and the African origin population is about 5-6%, but in Scotland it's about 1%.
So, so you know any black people growing up there, or did you see black people? What's that like?
Uh, Very few. I mean, I had an expensive British education. I went to Eton, the famous private school, and there were black people there, and some of whom I still know, but they were from Nigeria. They weren't British black. They were Nigerian black.
But so the school you went to was in England. It wasn't in Scotland.
Yeah, I was brought up in England.
Oh, okay. So now we got it. Okay, okay.
But
So,
it's like, I was born in Canada. I live now in Scotland. I was brought up in England, which is why
I
my
got
accent is very English.
yeah, I got you. So with there being very few black people, do
Mm.
do do you see them and do they have any kind of voice there in Scotland? Can they do something?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking earlier to a friend of mine who's who would call himself Scottish Jamaican. He came aged 14 years old from Jamaica with his mother, and he's called Jeff Palmer. He's now Sir Jeff Palmer because the King gave him a knighthood, and he's one of the most important people in Scotland. I mean, he's head of one of Scotland's most important universities. He's retired now, but
Yeah.
he's a professor. He was so yeah. No, I mean, we have a we have a we have a significant population. I mean, one of the country's most famous and most important uh, pop music rock bands, is from my city, Edinburgh, and they're called the Young Fathers, and I would recommend them to everyone. In
Okay.
their entirety, they are all black people.
Oh, really?
There's and I think my I think so when a lot of black people migrated to Britain after the Second World War and in the 60s and so on, but they tended to go to places where there were lots of jobs. you
Yeah,
know
sure,
so
sure.
all the Jamaican and Caribbean people who migrated, in huge numbers in the 50s and 60s, went to London and the middle of England where there were industrial jobs to be had. They didn't
Yeah,
come here
sure.
because there
Yeah,
weren't
I
jobs.
got you. Okay.
He- I mean, what's kind of interesting, I mean, Scotland always says, we feel like a minority within Britain, and we feel like we're very not, we say we're not racist here, but you kind of go, we are all white, so there's nothing to be people pride themselves on something that doesn't exist because, because there isn't a non-white population, except,
Okay. That opened the door because and that was where I was going next. The racism is everywhere. Can they be racist in Scotland? Do they hold black people back? They live whatever few there are in certain neighborhoods. Do they intermingle? Any of that kind of thing?
well, no, I would. Well, I mean, we have to unpick that question, I think. I mean, so I'm a journalist, so I do see things and get around and ask questions. I No, I would say, there's not a sort of ghettoization issue around color here. This just the population isn't big enough. But then equally, and this is not true not just in Scotland, to a very I mean, people of color, because we have a lot of Asian people of Asian origin, Asian heritage as well, tend to be among the poorest. So I would say, I there is street racism, street level racism here. There was the police picking on people because of their skin color, or
Yeah.
behaving worse to them because of that. And there's a terrible case that we're all talking about at the moment, which is going through the courts in Scotland. But what the racism is systemic. It's within the structures. So, and I know this is true in the States as well. So if you're a black person living in my road, the chances are you will have a less good job, your health will not be as good, and your child won't get as good an education. and you have, so in that sense, the system is racist, I would say.
Okay, but hold on. I gotta go to school, the same school you went to. If there's no other, if there's no school just for blacks, how do I get less of them?
Well, I
Less
think
of
that's a very
these.
good question. And of course, you don't necessarily, it could work out well. It's just if you look at the statistics overall, um, black children don't attain as well in the British system as white
Oh,
people.
I see what you're
And
saying.
my take on that, and most people's take on that, is that that's because of poverty, because poverty is a brake on learning,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
and it's because of health issues, because black people in Britain, their health is not as good as white people's, and that's because of access to healthcare and so on. And then and a black teenager in Britain, just like in the US, is more likely to be stopped and searched by the police, and
Oh,
they're more likely to get a jail term than a white
okay,
youth.
that's across the board.
Those
Yeah,
systemic things, which are true, I know, in the United
yeah,
States,
yeah,
exist here as
yeah.
well.
Did
I
they
mean,
have excuse me for that? Did they have a Black Lives Matter movement in
oh yeah,
Scotland of
very
any
much.
sort?
But yeah, no, very much so. And Black Lives Matter UK is very alive and strong. We didn't really have it existing until the death of George Floyd. So Black Lives Matter, it didn't exist in the sort of, and I think a lot of black people here knew that Black Lives Matter existed as an organization pre that terrible event,
Yeah,
between
sure.
pre June 2020. But I think that all of Britain became aware of Black Lives Matter post the George Floyd murder. So yeah, no, and I think we have I mean, and the other thing, of course, is the majority. So I think I shouldn't. We should be asking a black British person to speak, not me. I think the majority. So people of African heritage in Britain are either direct from West Africa, or they're the descendants of enslaved people from the Caribbean. So that's kind of clear, and what's also kind of clear is that the people descended from the enslaved may have a greater level of systemic racism against them, greater levels of mental health issues, things like that.
Oh, well,
Because
go ahead.
I think that's partly because when they arrived, so many of ththose arrived here in the 1950s and 1960s as labor from the Caribbean, and the racism against them was notoriously atrocious in that era.
Did you ever learn of growing up in England, let's say, and then going to Scotland, of any Black history stories? Was that ever something? How did you become who you are?
Yeah, well, I mean that's a really interesting question, Anthony, and it's something I talk about a lot. So I had an elite education. I went to a paid for private school, a famous one, and so I had the best education. But looking back on it, I was taught a really dishonest propaganda about the British Empire and what Britain had done to black people in the Caribbean, uh, and I'm furious about that. And were we taught positive stories of black people? No, not at all. And I think black people's role in my country's history, which is huge, was completely ignored. I mean, and not just the fact that Britain enslaved and shipped across the Atlantic against their will over 3 million black people to the United States and to the Caribbean. I wasn't told that. And I wasn't told also how their labor and the exploitation of them made my country rich in the 19th century. We were taught. I mean, when you come to the only thing that touches Black history that I was taught 50 years ago at school was that the British were responsible for the abolition of slavery, and we should be very proud of it. And when you look at the actual facts of that,
Yeah,
that is a
yeah.
really dishonest propaganda. How they teach history in North Korea. It's just a lie.
So how did they skip over all those years of what they did. Not I'm just saying, what do they say they did during the 1600s and 1700s?
So it was just ignored. I mean, I'm happy to say it's still not taught properly, I don't think. But my daughter, who's 19 and just left school and has gone to university, is she was taught a much more honest story of the transatlantic slave trade in enslaved people and the plantation slavery and so on in the southern United States and in the Caribbean. But still not, we were taught that we were the good guys. I mean, literally, should be very proud that Britain in 1807, William Wilberforce, big hero, lots of statues to him, abolished the trade in enslaved people from Africa. Not slavery, that continued another 28 years. But and then we abolished slavery in the British Empire in 1834 to 38, so 30 years before the US. And we were taught these were things to be proud of, but we weren't taught how they came about. And what we weren't taught is why a lot of people of of darker skin and African and Caribbean origin were in our country. We weren't told they're here because you enslaved your ancestors and they have a right to be here.
Right.
And it was as though, because I mean, Britain was a slave state, just like America was before the Civil War.
That's right.
1865. But we had it at arm's length. We had it 5,000 miles away, whereas Americans had it in their backyard.
Right.
But we did exactly the same. I mean, we enslaved far more people than America did. But we kept it in the Caribbean. We didn't have to smell it or see it.
Right.
We could ignore it and call
I
ourselves.
gotta ask you this question. I mean, and I mean no disrespecting this. How did you be a nice guy to feel the way you feel though? Because you could have been a racist, maybe, thinking all the things in the propaganda that they said about black people. What happened to you personally? Somebody said something. You met a guy and you had, you know what I mean?
It's a great question, Anthony, and it's something that people have I'm 63, and how old are you? Are we the same kind of age?
63.
You look much younger.
Yeah, I'll be 64
you
in December.
You haven't got the white stuff.
I just trimmed
it. So we grew up in the 70s. As a teenager, I started listening to black music. It's that simple, and it's not just listening, to soul and American soul, and which I loved. I was listening to music from Jamaica. I was educated by Bob Marley. Literally, I was educated by Bob Marley. Sitting in my room, spinning Exodus, and those records, and other, Burning Spear and Black Uhuru, and other. We were really into. We were white middle class boys, really into reggae. And we were hearing them singing about Exodus and and the pain and the suffering and we were educated by Bob Marley.
So you found some people that of like mind, like yourself, that you could be friends with, so on and so forth.
But I mean, I think also, I mean, what it was like growing up in the 70s. A revolution had happened just when we were kids. Like everything had been turned on its head. We came from it wasn't cool to be a racist any longer. I think something happened because of music and culture and so on. It wasn't cool to be a racist the way our parents did.
Okay, let me ask you.
And it was a matter of shame, and I think music, I'm not, of course. We were racists in another way, and we didn't do nearly enough. But there was a great switch in the mind for people like me then, and that's and we started reading history. I watched Roots, as a teenager because it was repeated on British TV.
Oh man!
So that was that. We're the same age. You know how important that was in America.
Sure.
But Roots, the TV series. But again, it was a way away in America. I didn't really relate it to my country.
Yeah, sure. I guess my next question. So let me ask you this: This is what are the skinheads?
Say again.
What are skinheads?
So skinheads in the 70s and a bit after were a sort of subculture of racist white youths who listened to a certain kind of music and were very much poor white working class and a very visible culture. And we used to fight them, and we used to, that
Oh,
was
really?
yeah, it was a sort of street gang thing. And it was interesting because some of the music we liked, because they liked weirdly, they listened, ska, that
Yeah,
Jamaican
yeah,
early, they liked ska, but it was produced by black people. So of
yeah,
course some of
right.
the ska bands started saying, well, you can't like this music and hate black people. So
Yeah.
there was we talked about race a lot, in when I was a teenager,
Okay.
around music, So skinhead, is a culture, yeah, a subculture.
Okay.
Yeah, scary. And some of those people grew up to be full on white supremacists.
What could they have had the same kind of influence or might as the KKK of that era?
No, not really, because I mean, it was a teenager movement.
Oh, okay, okay,
Or
okay,
white teenagers. It wasn't an adult movement. I mean, there were adult racist movements that you might compare to the KKK, but they weren't, they didn't dominate, parts of rural Britain. It wasn't, they were, the adult right wing, neo-fascist racists who are still around in Britain. It was very much a poor white urban thing.
do
So.
they have a title?
Well, and when I was growing up, then they would call themselves the National Front,
Oh, really? I've heard
and
that
and a
term.
lot of
Yeah.
a lot of people, and they were, but and they people who were National Front are now, they're a political party that represents a lot of them called Reform. It's not currently called Reform, and they're very much stop immigration, send people home. It's ridiculous
Oh, really?
statements.
Okay.
And but and that's true in politics across Europe. I mean, that and I think always there is a far right. What we don't have is a sort of Christian far right like you do in the States. We don't
Yeah.
have this sort of white supremacist, Trump supporting Southern
Oh,
Baptist. You know,
okay, okay.
thank the Lord. I mean,
Yeah,
we don't have that. And that looks very strange to us. But
yeah, sure. Yeah, let me ask you this then. Growing up there in London, in their days or what have you, in Scotland, what black media did you know? Did Ebony come that far? Did you see the
Ebony the
Jeffersons or
magazine.
any TV shows that had black people in it?
Yeah, we watched a lot of US TV. So you get reruns of US TV, Cosby Show, or things like that. I Yeah, I mean, not. I mean, so and also Hollywood films. So as soon as big Hollywood stars, Eddie Murphy and so on, started
Okay,
making.
okay,
Eddie Murphy was a huge hit. I still love Eddie Murphy. Doesn't make
okay,
great
okay.
anymore. So I think, yeah, no, pretty, yeah. I mean, yeah, I mean, yeah, no, yeah, no, I think we, yeah. Sorry, I'm not.
Yeah,
I
no,
haven't.
you're good. You're good. You're good. Let me ask you
I
this.
mean,
So now, go ahead.
and then also, I mean, so I lived in London from when I was 20 through to when I was 40, and I lived in a part of London, North Kensington, which has a very large black population and is famous. Notting Hill is famous for it. So and there was more integration by that point, and but I remember, I'm a journalist, and I worked in London's main newspaper called the Evening Standard in the 1990s, and and this is in a city with probably a population of 2 million black people among the probably less, maybe a million, but 10% of the city in the 90s, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
But we had 250 journalist staff, and we had one black guy, literally one. Hugh Muir. He's now very senior on the Guardian newspaper. But looking back, I remember talking about it. We were going, this is, because we were young then, we were going, this is ridiculous. But we had one black news reporter.
Yeah.
Just
What
insane.
what is so you're a journalist and you've written a book. Let's go into, we're going to talk about that. You've written a
I've got
book.
it
You
here.
got the
You
book
told me to
there
bring
to
a copy.
show us and that kind of thing.
You said I should. You said get a copy, and now I can't.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's under my laptop.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, they want to see the book. Okay.
Um,
So tell us
um,
about it. Tell us the name and everything else.
yeah. So yeah, and you can get this in the States. It's on Amazon, and on Kindle as well. But hold on, I'm just going to like raise my computer again.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, so I mean, I've written a few books, sort of journalistic books, but so this book is called Blood Legacy, Reckoning with a Family's Story of Slavery by Alex Renton. And I published this, or it was published in 2021 and in paperback as well. And it's an audio book too. So, I mean, I didn't publish it. It was published by
Sure,
a proper
sure.
publisher.
Yeah. And what's it
Uh,
about?
so it's the story of my mother's family. Uh, every time I start this, I have a little gulp in my chest because this is awful, and I feel it's part of me, and it feels like it's sick, it is sickening. So my mother's family owned enslaved African people and profited from them in the Caribbean. From the 1760s right through to the end of slavery. So in Jamaica, so they had a sugar plantation in Jamaica, right through till 1875, actually, after the end of slavery, and where at the height of it there were 200 enslaved African people on it, and they had a plantation in Tobago which lasted less long and had at most 75 enslaved people. And I grew up, I didn't know this. I had no idea. And I literally, I was at my grandfather's house in Scotland, where my cousins live nowadays, and ancient, old house. And I was in the basement, and there's a load of old papers in boxes and so on. I was looking through them, and I kept coming across these words, Jamaica and Tobago. And I asked my mother, who was there, she grew up in that house, what it was, and she went, "Oh yes, yeah, my father did say something. He said we were briefly involved in slavery, but I shouldn't be too worried because everybody else was, and we didn't do it for very long, and we didn't make much money."
Okay, hold on. Wow. Into that. So he says this, and he knows it's wrong.
Yeah, he knew it was shameful, and she. I mean, that conversation would have been, in the he died in 1973, so it had been a long time ago. It was nothing to be proud of, but nothing to boast about. But the thing, he didn't tell her the truth. I mean, he lied to my mother, I think, in order not to upset her. He
She would
said,
have been upset about that. She would have had the consciousness to say, "Hold on, what you did wasn't right. I don't care for that."
"Was."
So that's how you got to be who you are, because she engraved some of this in you. Then I would suspect.
But yeah, totally. But I mean, who could possibly say that enslaving black people to make money was okay? I mean, could anyone say that today?
I wondered
I mean,
about
I think
that.
that's, enslaving black people, enslaving anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one of the greatest crimes. It's a crime against humanity.
Okay.
So I would kind of, I'm not, I mean, I've never, I know a lot of people who now know their families were involved in the business of enslavement. And while some of them say we don't want to talk about it and we don't want to be blamed for it, not one of them says it was okay,
Oh,
Um,
really? I
I
never
mean,
heard
okay,
about that.
I would, does that surprise you? I mean,
Well, let me tell you, I got a guy here that I met when I went to Alabama about 3 months ago, and his great great grandfather was one of the largest slavers of the state. And he tells us, and now he's running, if I can say running around. He can't say I apologize because it wasn't him, but he is extending his hand in love, saying, "Hey, he did this. Let me tell you how I feel about it, and I'm not a part of that." That when and so then she finds that out. You look at these papers, and then you begin to do research.
Yeah. So there were a lot of papers, and they were a jumble. I mean, I think my grandfather had looked at them, and he'd done some notes and cataloging on them, and but there's probably, oh, I don't know, several hundred letters and accounts books, and very they ran it. It was a business run like a business today, and they paid taxes and so on, and I started reading all the letters and transcribing them, and my mother helped me actually, and it took about a year to get through all of it. And I've got those. If anyone wants them, I don't see why I should have them. I've got my I'll email them to you. But and what I realized was, the story, it was completely gripping on all sorts of levels. And it was a granular account of the day-to-day business of treating human beings like farm animals for profit, and the sort of very basic day-to-day horrors of that, and it's and there are lists. I mean, I could put them on screen.
Give me an example of one of them
Okay.
that might have made you cry or something like that, or
Yeah, I
really
think with the first time when I was going through those papers that I actually felt physically sick, to put it that way. I was I came across an inventory. So one of my uncles, times six, great uncle, James Ferguson, went out to Tobago in 1770, bought some land, 300 acres, and an initial, it was jungle, and the British had seized Tobago off the native people, or off the French, and then the native people, and then and 10 black men newly arrived from West Africa, and he traipsed off into the jungle with them, and they started hacking down the trees to make buildings and a farmhouse and start a plantation. And he writes back to his brothers who are funding this thing, telling them what's going on, and he's proud of himself, and he's frightened, and it's really interesting. And he wrote back to his older brother, Sir Adam Ferguson, who's another uncle of mine, saying, in the house where literally the house where I'm reading this stuff, that's where the letter arrived 250 years earlier. Yeah, it's incredible. Saying, I'm working well with the, I mean, he uses an N word to say it, which is what they used in those days. They respect me. I treat their wounds, and I work alongside them. It sounds all terribly chummy. And then he says, I've designed this, and I wanted your approval of it. And this is, you look at it, and it's a sort of squiggle on the letter, and what it is JF and AF, like written together. A logo, James Ferguson and Adam Ferguson, their initials. And he says, if you approve of this, I will send to Barbados and have it cast in silver before I mark the N word. And what he's saying is he's designed a brand for his brother to approve of, so they can proudly burn their initials into the chests of these men that he's working alongside.
Wow.
And because I kind of got caught up in this is such an adventure, and he and the black people are working alongside, and they're clearly getting on. This is all kind of nice. And then you go, no, it's not at all. They are farm animals, and they die and die and die. The average lifespan of them and the ones on the Jamaica plantation is 4 years. And it's cheaper to work them to death and buy a new one than it is to look after them properly. It's awful. And then the next thing, in terms of the nauseating things, and this is my flesh and blood, these are ancestors I was brought up to respect. I got you.
The
next thing is so James dies himself after 4 years of diphtheria or something. I mean, the white men died too, but not in agony and terror like the black people.
Sure.
And there's an inventory made for his brothers and his heirs about what's left on the estate, which has now become a cotton plantation, cotton and indigo, and it lists by name all the enslaved people, 70 of them he's got now. And their names, they're made up names. They're not their African names. They're called, Hector or Zeus or George or Philippa. They've got English, they've got comedy names. They've been dehumanized. And it lists them by their value at market. So, the field hands might get this and the cook will get more because, and right down at the bottom, it's got the children. And then below the children, there's 5 children on the estate. And below the children, it's got the horses and the cows. And you look at it and you go, Colin, Jeannie, Flora. And Flora's clearly very tiny and she's worth £5. And that's less than a cow. Is listed immediately below. And that's absolutely a punch in the face. You go, do not mistake this for some sort of bad labor practice or something. This is human beings. You're breeding human beings to make money by selling them and working them to death. So there's absolutely no getting away from the crime of it. So I find that pretty shocking, I can tell you. I should have known.
This is an account, and I'm summing it up, not that this is the last question. This is an account from their perspective. A lot of times when we talk about Black history, we don't say it from the enslavers' perspective of what they actually did. We just talk about what happened. I guess I'm summing that up correctly.
And our retrospective view of it. No, so this is brothers writing to each other about what's going on with their investment. And then on the other plantation, it's managers writing back to the same brothers in Scotland because they hired white Scottish managers in the plantation in Jamaica, and just reporting on what's going on. And the brothers write letters going, I'm really angry to learn that yet again, this year, 3 mules have died and 5 slaves. What, you must take better care of them, that kind of thing. And the thing that struck me reading these letters is they weren't so unlike me. They're brothers. They write interesting, and they write jokes to each other and so on. I could understand their jokes. I felt an affinity with them, to these long lost uncles. And it seems to me that we rightly paint the slavers, whether they're in the movies or in 10 Years a Slave or whatever, as monsters. And of course they do behave in monstrous people, but it's important to remember that they were human beings with my skin like me. And they were Christians. They were more Christians than I am. They called
How did they justify this?
They went to church. Well, because they'd organized the Anglican Church, the Church of England, to tell them that Black people were not as good as, in God's eyes, were not as good as white people. I mean, they sincerely believed that Black people were farm animals who could speak. Yeah, and they wouldn't allow them to be baptized. If a priest, if a missionary arrived on this is later on in the early 19th century, arrived on a plantation, they'd chase them off because it was too dangerous to let the priest talk to the Black slaves, because that would be to admit that the Black slaves were human and equal. And that's why they weren't allowed any education, because if they could read and write, then you're going, oh my God, they might be the same as me. And they couldn't do that because that would destroy they believed in the rights. One of them was a politician, and he believed in the American Revolution, and he read Thomas Paine and so on. They believed in the rights of man, just not Black man. So it's, for me telling this story, it seemed really all the more important because it's saying this could be me. You have to be aware that this is not an ancient history. This is, and it affects our society today.
Well, what would you have had to be like, given what you just said? It could have been you, for you not to participate in that. for you not to feel that way?
Well, I mean, I mean, look, I think we all know that, that peer pressure is hugely strong. If you live in a society where if you live in a society where everyone else is saying it's really everyone's got to eat a banana in the middle of the night because everyone else is doing that, then you kind of go, oh, maybe I should do that. I mean, I think social pre it's not an excuse. Social pressures, and also there was a gold rush on. I mean, then everyone they knew in Scotland, in Britain, and other European countries were making a fortune. It's not like enslavement in America in the same period. The money to be made out of sugar planting and trading enslaved people in the late 18th century was absolutely massive. You could turn a few pounds into a massive fortune in 10, 20 years. And so there was a gold rush. So greed comes into it. But but the thing because there are angry British people who say, shut up about this, it's ancient history, you're just stirring
That's
things
what
up.
they're saying to you.
Exactly. And they go, that was then and this is now, times have changed. And you go, well, no, because the abolitionist movement in Britain, at the same time as my ancestors were at the height of their plantations, the abolitionist movement in Britain was 400,000 people signed a petition to Parliament in 1792 saying that the trade must be abolished. So they knew, they had neighbors, and friends and probably members of their own family who knew what they were doing was wrong. It's greed. I mean,
Okay, let me ask you this then. If they had not done it that way, what would have been another way to do it? Get these people and then pay them a wage?
well, I think that's really interesting because it's I mean, you're looking at the economic. I mean, so the argument from the plantation owners, was and that's very well recorded. Was always, we can't produce sugar like this at the prices you want it in the UK without with higher labor costs. So feeding, so paying a wage and indeed treating the enslaved like human beings and with rights is going to raise prices too high. So by the 1800, the slavery industries and the sugar industries are 11% of Britain's economy, GDP. And Britain's fighting wars, big wars against Napoleon, against against the new United States, and borrowing huge amounts of money. And it can borrow the money because the massive tax revenues coming in from the slavery industries. And my ancestors, they did make money, but they paid more money in taxes on that money they made out of enslaving Africans than they earned in profits. So I think it's one of those things where the whole machine, the capitalist machine of it, just becomes impossible to push off the road without you thinking, revolution or anarchy. But that's no excuse.
Yeah, I got you.
So I mean, clearly you could have employed the African people decently and paid more for your sugar or more for your cotton if it was coming out of Georgia and Alabama.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought too.
I
Let
mean,
me
I
ask you,
mean,
how did it end for them? How did the plantation end? I know slavery ended, but when did slavery end on those islands? What happened
so
to these guys? What happened?
well, I mean, my ancestors and the British slavers, plantation owners, had a much happier ending than their equivalents in America did. So basically, it happened legally. So so public opinion basically by 1830 meant that slavery had to be abolished. That government was not going to be elected if it continued to support it. But the slave owners went, yeah, okay, abolish slavery, but you're going to have to compensate us. This is our property. We bought these people legally. We own them. You can't just take them off us. So the British government passed a law compensating the slave owners per capita of enslaved person they owned. And it was a lot of money. So my ancestors, they got their payout in about 1836, and they and their partners in the Jamaica plantation now, Roselle, if anyone knows Jamaica, it's in St. Thomas Parish, near White Horses. They got compensation for 198 people, and that was the equivalent of 3.6 million British pounds today. That's probably nearly 4 million US dollars.
Ooh.
Straight handout. And guess what the newly freed Black people got in Jamaica?
Right.
Nothing. Zero. They didn't get land, they didn't get education, they didn't get anything. And they were but what they did get was a white man with a gun saying you've got to go on working, except now you're going to get a wage. But the sugar economy collapsed. So you then after that you get set, a bit like in the US, you get decades and decades of extreme poverty for the freed people.
Yeah.
Still ruled by white people, because Jamaica and the others remain a colony for another 130 years.
Oh my God.
So it's my ancestors were a part of that too. So it's not the story I was taught at school.
Yeah, sure. Almost as we come to a close, that's a thick book that you've written.
Yeah, well, I hope it's readable. I mean, I'm not a historian. I've written it in a way that
thick. So, I mean, give me an example. What are some of the chapters?
I think the
what
chapters,
they did, how they did it, the letters
Yeah.
I wrote. You know what I mean?
how it worked. I mean, and it's got some pictures. I mean, I think for me now, the most important chapters for me are the ones set today. So once I'd done all this research, I went to Jamaica and I went to Tobago, and I went.
Okay.
I did something none of my family have ever done, which I went to the land and talked to the descendants of the people we enslaved, and I said,
Oh,
"Look,
really?
here I am. What do you think?" And I'm sorry. I mean, and people were so nice. I mean, people just went, "That's really cool. You're here. Come and have a cup of something. You look thirsty." And I had some really great conversations about what this story means to people living in poverty in the Caribbean today does, and people not living in poverty, everybody in the Caribbean, because everybody, who's Black in Jamaica is the descendant of an enslaved person. And of course, conversations with the many people living in Britain who are descendants of slavery now. And that led me to do what I do now, which is support reparations. So I want my country to apologize, which we've never done. And I want my country to help and support Black people until we live in greater equality and we end racism.
I gotta ask you, are you putting your life on the line saying this and writing that book? Are you afraid in any regards? Are people saying things to you?
You know what? I get a lot of abuse and a lot of hateful stuff online and so on.
Oh,
and
really?
know who? Yeah, a lot. And evil stuff. Then you know who it comes from? Old white people. Every Black person I've engaged with just go. I mean, a lot of people have questions. A lot of people tell me I should hand over all my money. I mean, we have very great conversations, but I get decent, honest conversation. And some people say, well, you can ally with us and support us, and that would be a good thing for you to do. And what most Black people say to me is, if we need people like you to acknowledge the truth of what happened and stop pretending it doesn't matter today. And if that's the only thing you do, that's a good thing. So that, I mean, I give profits from this. This is a non-profit book. I mean, the profits go to charities for Black youth in the Caribbean and education and in UK. But I couldn't make more money out of slavery, clearly. But I've made some great friends. I've had some brilliant conversations. I think it's the most important thing I've done in my career as a writer, and it's been the best thing for me and my family. I mean, imagine my children and me saying, "Oh, let's not talk about that story. Let's hide it," which is what was said to me. And my children would be horrified my children, they've got lots of criticisms of me, but at least, they think this was the right thing to do. And they can they can talk to their black friends and talk about it, saying we've done our best to address and acknowledge it.
Well, let me ask you this: when you thought of doing this, did you get on your knees and say, "Look, I'm about to go in uncharted territory. I'm going to the edge. I'm old enough to do this, and now I'm okay with it." How did that night go before you released the book, or while you were writing the book?
Anthony, I don't want to paint myself as any kind of risk-taking martyr. I mean, I was very nervous about the book, but I knew it was the right thing to do. I thought my family have sat on this history doesn't belong to us. It belongs to the descendants of the black people whose ancestors we murdered for profit. It's really wrong that it's sitting in boxes in a basement in rural Scotland. And the first thing I did was talk to some black friends and say, I've got all this material. What do you think I should do with it? Because of course, that's the right question, right people to ask. And, and people said, I don't want any more of that horrible slavery story, but I do want to know how you white people are going to sort yourselves out with this history.
Right, yeah, I could do
You're
that.
You're the ones with the problem. And I kind of tried to let that guide me. We're the ones in denial about our past, trying to pretend something happened something happened in a different way from how it did, and putting black people down on grounds of their skin color, just as my ancestors enslaved black people on the grounds of their skin color. And that's how to take this story forward. But, I am told, because
I love it.
It's for people like you whose ancestors were enslaved to tell me what to do, not the other way around.
Okay, let me ask you this then. What's happened since you released it? Have you gotten some awards? Are you doing public speaking? Are you
I do
any of that kind of thing?
It's got no awards. It got some great reviews. It sold a few copies. Sold a few in the States as well. I do a lot of public speaking, which is great. I do a lot of school events, which is cool.
On that topic,
there's something really great about standing up in front of young people and saying why I've done this and who I am, and that is, but it can be complicated if you're in a school which is got a mix of different races.
Sure.
You got to be careful. You got to be careful not to offend and hurt and put people at risk. But I think what I'm probably most proud of is that other families are now coming forward.
Oh, really?
We formed a group. It's online called heirsofslavery.org, and which is entirely other people who are acknowledging that their families made money from slavery.
Really?
Enslavement, and want to apologize and acknowledge as well. And we have a lot of them are donating money to causes, but a lot of them just saying, I'm going to stop denying this. I'm going to acknowledge it and acknowledge how it affects our society today.
Are they around the country, around the world?
Yeah, well, that's it. Well, there already are organizations like that in the States, and
really?
we've been in touch with some of them. Yeah, descendants of slave owner organizations, plantation owner organizations. But yeah, there were not much around the world, though. We've now got one started in France, because France enslaved in Haiti and in Martinique and Guadeloupe in the Caribbean, in Portugal, where many Africans shipped to Brazil by the Portuguese. And so it is a growing movement in Europe. It's small, but I think what's great is that we've kind of broken a wall. We've said it's okay to talk about this. No one's going to come and smash your windows, and you will be welcomed if you start talking about this. And the next thing, what we're hoping, the really exciting thing, Anthony, is what the King of England does, King Charles, because his family, the King's family, deeply involved throughout history in the enslavement of African people for profit. And he's announced an audit a year and a half ago, before he was crowned, announced an audit of the family history. And that man is worth billions. And he will have to stump up, say he was sorry, and pay. You know, that's going to happen, and that's a big moment, and we're all looking forward to it.
Oh my God.
The royal family.
Incredible.
Yeah, I know that's big. And if he does it, then there are many others to follow.
Is this God doing this? Because at the end of the day, God has the last word. Is God, you know what I'm saying? Because I mean, things happen and they do happen, but somehow people, I mean, over time, God steps in. Is that God doing that? For him to do this, for you to do this?
I think you know, I have a lot of faith in human beings. I mean, maybe that's having faith in God, but what
Yeah.
I see this is as the march of the light against the dark, in the sense of
I love it.
openness against ignorance. We it's about education. This is about education. You know, I and many people of my generation were taught lies by racists, and we're clearing the decks, and we're trying to shine the light on the. And when you shine the light of truth, it's good for everybody, I think.
Oh man, incredible. Is there a question that I have not asked you, so to speak? Something that, I mean,
No,
you know, anything
I'm
come to
cool.
mind?
We haven't asked me where we're going to go and have a pint of British beer in October when you come
Yeah.
to.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll talk about that offline because I really want to come. I want to meet you, man. Yeah. How about
Yeah,
this?
I love to.
Let me tell you something. I'm almost starting to cry.
Oh,
I'll be honest with you, man. Because,
no, I
and I
understand.
do this every so often. I can't help it because it's the emotion of it gets to me. I'm emotional right now.
Yeah,
I
I
met
mean,
an icon in front of me. You got
oh
to
man,
sleep better at night. You got to feel better. You are moving people.
oh, thank you, Anthony. I mean, I think, you know, I'm immensely privileged. You know, it's part of the privilege, you know, that I had access to these papers. You know, and I got to tell the story. I'm a really lucky man. You know, and it's been great for me, great for my family. You know, it's been, you know, hard work, really interesting. But you know, I'm a lucky man that I was able to start to try and. You can't put
Because
this
the
right.
paper sat
No,
there. Somebody
no
knew the
way you
papers
can.
were there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, they were going to molder away into dust, but there's no way this can be put right. There's no way you can give back those lives and all the descendants whose lives were blighted as well. And you know, but you can begin to say, let's not make what happened worse by by continuing to say, to deny it to the descendants of people who were enslaved. And to be part of that, you know, that's really, I'm a lucky man. You know, that's great. But I yeah, I mean, you know, and if anyone wants to get in touch, I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
my
How do we? Yeah,
well,
yeah.
so
You got a
the book
website,
the book
anything that
has a
you?
website,
Okay,
which is bloodlegacybook.com.
okay.
There's a contact, you know, get in touch with me. And also, if anyone, you know, if anyone wants, I will send them the plantation, those documents the book's based on, because I think everyone should have them. I tried to offer them to the University of the West Indies, but they don't have the facilities. So, but I have a digital version that I can send to people if anybody wants them.
Wow.
They're horrible. They're really interesting though.
Have you been to America to talk about this yet?
No, I haven't, sadly. I'd love to. I mean, because the reparations movement in America, I'm really interested in. The
Yeah,
city
yeah,
reparations for Jim Crow and so on. And
yeah,
you know that because that's, you know, that's very much my thing now. I mean, the
yeah. Well,
reparations movement
yeah,
is different, but
yeah.
no, I'd love to invite me. I mean, I'd come
Yeah,
like a
yeah, we're gonna make that happen. I'm gonna send this to the people over at the museum, the Smithsonian, and introduce it to them. Hey, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. I found you. This is what I do here, Strong Inspirations. It's God led, in my respect, that I found this guy. It was on Twitter or something like that,
Did
and
you?
lo
Is
and
that
behold, yeah. And he
um
said, "Come on, yeah,
hey, Anthony, thanks so much. No, it's been great. I mean, I love talking about it. I mean, it's
yeah,
really good, you know,
yeah, yeah."
you know, and particularly to someone like you with, you know, a different history and a different experience.
Yeah, sure,
Um,
sure. Everybody, again, y'all, you know, I kind of woke up just a tad because that's what an icon looks like. It's somebody who's been privy to some information and they don't bury it. You could have buried that. You couldn't have done anything with that, and you chose not to. And again, all this really comes from what we talked about at the beginning. Somebody sparked something in you because you went to that privileged school and you heard them talk about black people and call them names and stuff like that, the black kids. And you might have been the one that says, hey, no, don't say that about him. I don't appreciate that. Maybe do a little fisticuffs against somebody. That's another story. But you became who you are somehow. And now you're on your
I
mission
think
in
I'm
your
going to thank
ministry.
Bob. We said earlier, I'm going to thank Bob Marley first.
Yeah, we thank Bob
Bob Marley
for that.
educated me.
Yeah, there you go. Everybody hit the like button. There is no love button on this, but I know you loved it because I did. Hit the notifications bell when the videos come out. You get a ding a shot. Go to his website, and that is again the book's website.
Well, it's alexrenton.com is that. Yeah, that's probably
How you spell Renton?
It says ALEXRENTON.
Yeah, there you go. Go
and
there.
the book,
Go there. Yeah.
the book, Good Blood Legacy. I mean, you can find that on Amazon.
Yeah. Okay. Go there, everybody, and go to my website, businessintheblack.net. And to you, I say this, and I mean this with all sincerity. I want you to stay strong, stay safe, and I mean that. Stay on your grind. I love what you become and love what you're doing. I really do. Thank you so very much for coming on Strong Inspirations, and I'll be in touch.
Thank you, Anthony.
Thank you. Bye-bye.